For this assignment, we're going to need your pencil toolkit. So you have a couple of ebony pencils in here and a vinyl eraser, a kneaded eraser, um, a blending stump, a pencil sharpener, and I would recommend obtaining a tissue from somewhere so that we can get really nice, smooth blending. The next thing that you're going to want to do, since all of these gradation sheets look the same, is we're going to put our name on our sheet with a pen. And I would also highly recommend numbering the little squares from 1 to 9. And it doesn't really matter if you make the 0, which will be white over here on the left-hand side, and the number 9 is the darkest value. It doesn't matter if you like flip-flop these, but the 9 is the darkest value and the 0 is the lightest value. That is one thing that you need to keep clear. So what we're going to do first is we are going to take our ebony pencil and create some value in this number 9 square as dark as possible. And if you notice, I am trying to stay within the square as much as possible. So another thing that I need to be aware of is, hopefully you noticed how I went multiple directions here, and I probably need to go back along this littler side and go another vertical direction because I didn't actually go all the way to the edge. And part of the reason I'm going slow here too is to make sure that I stay within the bounds of my square, because this is a stepped value scale. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're doing each square individually by themselves, and you want to stay within that square as much as possible. And another thing that we're going to talk about is the fact that you can either use your finger, and you can get value on your finger. So hopefully you can see that I've got some of that ebony pencil on my finger right now. Or you can actually take the blending stump. The blending stump is really, really good for getting the corners of the squares. But within the middle part of the square, you might want to take a tissue. So I'm going to actually take a tissue and rub a little bit of this value onto my tissue, and then what I'm going to do is come over to the number 1 square, and I'm just going to start to fill in really, really lightly some value into that square. So here I went and I put a number 1 value, and you can see there's a difference between the 0 and the 1. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to take some of that value from the number 9 again, and I'm going to go actually into the number 2 value. I'm going vertically first, and then I'm going horizontally, and I'm probably going to have to go back in with a blending stump to get the corners, because I can see right on the edges here the corners didn't get filled in with the value. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here into the number 9 value, and I'm going to put more ebony onto my square, because as I'm starting to work here, that ebony pencil is rubbing off of the square, and I need more of that graphite to actually make the value in the other squares that I have going on here. And part of the reason that I'm working technically, so I went the darkest here first, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just very slowly build up value layers. So I'm going to do another layer of value in this number 2 square, and hopefully you can see now it's a tiny bit darker than the number 1. I may need to go back in there and add a little bit more as I continue to go forward. And I just got a little bit of dark onto the tip of my blending stump, and I'm going to take it inside that little square, and I'm going to actually add a little bit of value right up to the edges of these. I know this might seem kind of funny, but part of the reason that we are creating this value scale so that you have sort of like a number scale, we're going to make a diagram when we actually do those value videos, or the value We're going to make a diagram when we do the value examples, the cylinder, the box, and the bag. And it'll be really nice to have this value scale in here with numbers, because we'll put like a number by each one of the value scales that we have there, and then you'll be able to see which number value to put in what space. So again, I'm going to take more of the value from my number 9 spot, and I'm going to go in the number 3, and this time I'm going to press just a little bit harder, because I can see I actually have a lot of value that I have to get in there. I almost made it the same as the number 2 already, and I'm again pressing kind of lightly and making sure that I don't go outside of the squares as much as possible. And I got to take some more because I can see it's not quite dark enough yet. So that one's a little bit darker. Again, I'm going to take my blending stump and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get the edges as much as I can. And it's important to have this be as much all the same value as possible. So if you notice, I'm not really pressing very hard. I did get a little bit of a mark on the top up here. You have to be kind of careful of that, because that's not something that we want in our final drawings later. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just clean up the edges after I've done this, so that I've got a really nice clean value scale to use. I do have to be kind of careful when I'm erasing, because if I accidentally like smudge too hard onto the paper, or if I erase too hard, I might wreck the paper, and then the paper doesn't react the same way. So again, I'm going to put some more of this ebony into number 9, and I can go as dark as I want to, because again, that number 9 is supposed to be as dark as you can get it. So I'm going to go another different direction here as I'm laying down another layer of value, and hopefully you can see it's starting to get really, really solid. As I'm doing that, I am continuing to use the graphite that's on here, so it's going to take a little bit of graphite off every time I'm doing the next thing. Into this number 4 slot, I'm going to put another layer of value, and I'm pressing a little bit harder again in order to make that square just a little bit darker than the number 3. And then I'm going to, again, take my eraser and go back in here and clean that up so that I've got a nice clean value scale. Again, I'm going to continue to do this until I get all the way to the number 8. Right now I'm really lightly adding just a little bit of value to number 6, because I can't get it any darker with the rubbing. And I'm just rubbing after I'm done adding that value, because I want to make sure that I've got a nice even layer of value on there. And then again, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to erase where I don't really want that value, so that I can see a good clean comparison if I hold this up to something else. I'm going to do the same thing with number 7. I can actually start to add value with my pencil because I need to get darker right away. So I'm just going to add one, actually I did 2 layers there technically, and then I'm going to switch directions and go a little bit darker. I am going to use my tissue to blend this in, but I just wanted to kind of get it started rather than having to add to it with number 9 again. And then again, I'm going to do the same thing for number 8. I can actually start to add value with my pencil, and I want to make sure that I get right up to the edges. And I'm going to rub this in, and I just have to make sure that the difference between the 7, the 8, and the 9 is apparent on my sheet. And right now, the 7 and the 8 look a little too close, so I'm going to continue to add value to number 8. Until it looks darker, but not as dark as number 9. That's actually pretty good for on my sheet. Part of the thing that you need to be aware of with ebony pencil too, right now, right in here, it looks like it's lighter in the number 8, but technically what's happening is, hopefully you guys can see that shine that's on there. Part of the reason we stop using ebony pencil after a while is because that shine is really hard to photograph. So we actually eventually start using the pastels and oil pastels, but the pencils are a little bit easier to start with. So we're going to do these first assignments in pencil, and then we're going to switch media eventually.